The Anabaptists emerged in the 16th century as part of the Radical Reformation, standing apart not only from Roman Catholicism, but also from the magisterial Protestant reformers such as Luther and Calvin. Their name, meaning rebaptizers, reflects their rejection of infant baptism and insistence on believers' baptism, a conscious, voluntary commitment to follow Christ. Yet Anabaptism was never merely about baptism. It was at its core a movement defined by discipleship, ethical obedience, and a radical reimagining of the relationship between the Christian and the world. Central to Anabaptist theology was the conviction that the teachings of Jesus were not symbolic ideals or future aspirations, but practical commands meant to be lived out in everyday life. Nowhere was this more evident than in their stance on violence. Drawing directly from the Sermon on the Mount, Anabaptists concluded that Christ's call to love enemies, refuse retaliation, and renounce the sword applied without exception. Violence, whether in warfare, law enforcement, or self-defense, was incompatible with genuine Christian faith. For the Anabaptists, the problem was not simply war itself, but the fusion of church and state that made war morally conceivable for Christians. They rejected the Constantinian assumption that the state could wield violence on behalf of God. The sword belonged to worldly authorities, not to the church. Christians, as citizens of the kingdom of God, were called to a higher ethic, one that privileged suffering over coercion and faithfulness over survival. This theological separation led Anabaptists to embrace nonconformity as a moral necessity. They refused military service, declined to swear oaths of allegiance, and avoided political office, believing such roles inevitably implicated believers in violence. This stance was not quietist withdrawal, but a visible, embodied protest against what they viewed as a corrupted Christian society. Their communities sought to model an alternative social order marked by mutual aid, simplicity, and peace. The cost of this commitment was severe. Anabaptists were persecuted relentlessly by both Catholic and Protestant authorities, imprisoned, tortured, and executed for their refusal to conform. Martyrdom became a defining feature of Anabaptist identity, not as a pursuit of death, but as a consequence of uncompromising obedience. Their willingness to suffer rather than kill was understood as a form of witness, a testimony that the way of Christ was fundamentally different from the way of power. In this sense, Anabaptist pacifism is best understood not as a political theory, but as a way of life. It asserts that the credibility of Christian ethics depends not on effectiveness or influence, but on faithfulness. The Anabaptist tradition thus represents one of the clearest historical expressions of absolute pacifism, a refusal to participate in violence grounded in discipleship, community, and a radical trust in God.